Good afternoon. I will jump, hopefully through the next 10 minutes fairly efficiently because I'm conscious you're hungry and probably not going to eat salmon at lunchtime. So I'm going to touch a little bit on our B Corp, what it means to us, probably spend a little bit more time on the vision of what we're building and explain a little bit about the how. So why do we exist? I'm going to talk through some of these points which might seem obvious, but our consumption of goods and services in one way or the other is ultimately dictating sort of humankind's footprint on the planet. And that could be the construction of those goods or services, the use of those goods or services, the byproduct or the waste of those goods or services. So to minimise and reduce that impact, we have to stop consuming and incurring that impact. We're asking getting on for 8 billion people to stop consuming is a really hard thing to do. And 10 years ago, I guess when I was playing with the intellectual challenge of how to find a solution, asking people not to do something just seemed like an inherently difficult thing to do. Be that flying, eating, buying, all sorts of different bits and pieces. So getting them to change their behaviour and getting them to consume different things seems to be an easier thing to do. And I think some of the other talks referenced in the last few hours have highlighted that there are better solutions, better technology, maybe better salmon out there that people can go and consume. So why aren't they? Well, one of the reasons is they're not aware of those other solutions being available. There's three sort of actors that can manage and influence change on the world stage. Governments, and I think it's fair to say that they have failed on lots of levels to deliver the change that we wanted to see. Businesses and people, and I guess we've spent some time working through the interplay between businesses and people. Businesses, traditionally, they've been profit first, there to drive shareholder value, but on the plus side, they've got the ability to move quite quickly. They care about their reputation through PR, or nowadays social. Some of them have got quite significant influence and reach, and believe it or not, they love copying each other. People, often referred to as consumers, which is right in some contexts, otherwise citizens, they're busy, often regarded, I think they could be described as apathetic, their lives are busy, they're not interested in changing their behaviour or necessarily trying new products and services. They're bombarded with advertising and messaging, and behaviour change for them is inherently difficult. On the plus side, most people are supportive of sustainability or sustainable actions, measures, initiatives. There's all sorts of stats out there. 86% of people would prefer to buy something if it was more sustainable. But in practice, it has to be super, super easy for them to make that change. There has to be no cost, ideally a cost saving, and it has to have the same utility really to drive significant change and to get large bodies of people to, I guess, consume differently or better. That collective buying was mentioned in the last talk, but collective purchasing can then affect the businesses that then care about their reputation and care about their performance. So I guess this is where we spent some time kind of thinking through. So the mission that we set out, and I know this looks a little bit like Bremley, this is actually Tom Cruise, is how do we influence people to consume across multiple products and services in a more positive way at scale? And I guess that's the really difficult thing. 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, sustainability wasn't really deemed as cool. It's now actually quite mainstream to the extent that you've got lots of greenwashing and every brand now talks about their sustainability strategy. Secondly, we wanted to demonstrate that a business can genuinely be a force for good. And the goal, at least, was to do that without requiring huge amounts of capital. We accepted we'd have to raise some money, but we wanted to raise that as traditional investment. We weren't expecting to raise that through impact investing, largely because there wasn't lots of impact investing when the business started. So, a few short slides on Just Move In. And we're a B Corp, so I'll explain a little bit more about that. We describe the business as a home moving platform or home moving service. And how does that join together with what I've just talked about? Well, moving home is painful. According to Which magazine, it's the second most stressful thing you'll ever do in your life. We assume that the first is probably divorce, or maybe marriage. There's probably 35 plus different services that you need to manage when you do move home. And that's setting up new services, telling organisations that you've moved home. It's a bit of a reset. And people crave trusted advice to go through this process. So that's the solution we built. We have the ability to serve people online through a digital app, which allows people to manage an array of different services, including those essential ones, council, water, sewage, energy as an example. We allow people to sign up to new services, and we allow people to speak to one of our friendly move specialists who can guide them and help them through that process. We have some great feedback. People love the service. We're helping people at a time of need. They really have to manage these services. A lot of people are lost. They need a bit of guidance. And through our help, we deliver a great solution. Now, we think of a lot of what I've just described there as a Trojan horse. And it's a Trojan horse to then engage and build a relationship with individuals and actually have the opportunity to influence them. Because there's a lot of amazing ideas out there. There's a lot of both in terms of products, but also sort of concepts. But how do you get those into the hands of people? That's the big challenge, so they can actually make some changes. So we've set about building this Trojan horse. It's the home setup service. We're operating in the UK today, and this is, I guess, why just move in? Well, it's crossing back over some of the points we've covered, but moving home is a change point in people's lives. They have to, they're automatically going through a reset. So we, by default, grab their attention. Number two, they have to manage some of these services. You have to set up your council tax, and there's an array of other important services that you need to manage. So not only do we have their attention, but if we structure the service and the journey in the right way, then we actually engage with those people and we have the opportunity to work with them and influence them. There's about 4 to 5 million people who move home in the UK every year. So fast forward 8 years, I think 80 to 90% of the population will have moved. And through, I guess, a range of different actions, we have the ability to influence those people through guiding, choice editing, gamification, all of which can lead to better outcomes. So I guess that's the underlying strategy to why Just Move In exists. How have we got on so far? We will process about 150,000 moves this year. We've got a pipeline, and our big goal is to get to 1 million. I mean, we'd love to go beyond that, but working towards 1 million moves in the UK seemed like a super audacious goal when we started, but we're now making some good steps towards that. We have a team of just over 50 people, and we're working with a range of different organisations in the home moving space to access their movers. So that's estate agents, letting agents, mortgage firms, conveyancing firms, tenant referencing firms, removals companies. And that's another, I guess, important strategy or trick. In order to go and find and access citizens, consumers, people, we're doing that through third-party companies, but we've had to build a value proposition which resonates with those people and those companies. We've raised money. It's not directly from impact investors, but we raised over £7 million to build the business that we have built today. And that's meant we've had to be attractive on a returns basis, as well as being able to deliver the impact that we are doing and strive to do in the future. I think we've got to the point where we're now an industry-leading service, but there's still so much more to do, both in terms of building the Trojan horse and the impact that we're working on. And here's a few logos across the bottom. So we're B Corp certified, but we're also 1% for the Planet member, and there's other references there. So what are we actually doing in practice from an impact perspective? Well, there's a range of things that we're doing for movers. When the business first started, we went into test mode, was in 2015. I was lucky enough to attend the Paris Climate Conference, and there was a massive call to action that year, particularly asking the world to move to 100% renewable energy. However, there was very few organisations really focusing on that, and there wasn't actually that many suppliers offering 100% renewable energy. I'm pleased to say that since 2015, when we started doing some early testing, that's sort of built into our process. But that's just one aspect, and now there's lots of, it's quite common for people to have access to 100% renewable energy in the UK. We're working with Worldview Impact and Bremley and helping plant mangrove trees and trees up in the foothills of the Himalayas, so that's another kind of step forward. And there's a whole range of things that we're in the process of working on, but helping movers measure their impact and raising the prominence of sustainability in relation to some of the brands that we work with. So those are some of the areas. We've also worked with the industry, trying to raise the profile of sustainability within predominantly the lettings and sales sort of industry, which still isn't particularly forward-thinking or progressive, but we've had some fun doing so, creating industry reports, questionnaires. We've run webinars with Gabby Logan, who hosted that. That was a couple of years ago. So, and I think doing everything that, as a sort of, as a sort of secondary strategy, if we can be a voice within the industry to raise the profile of sustainability within an industry that isn't really renowned for sustainability, well, that's a good thing, and that's another kind of piece of impact that we're delivering. And then third sort of sphere of influence is the local community, and I guess the people who work for the business. So we want to be a great business, and I think going back a couple of talks ago, you've got to lead by example, and I think the making sure that people are getting out of bed and actually enjoying the work that they're doing during the day and with building a nice environment is super key, and that's sort of attached to it as well. So those are just some of the areas that I guess where we've focused as a business. So B Corp. I've got a few stats here. B Corp stands for Benefit Corporation. It was started in the US in 2006. I believe they had their first sort of cohort of organisations that completed the certification in 2007. Today there's over 6,800, so it's a growing movement. In the UK, I think after America is the second fastest growing country for B Corps. There's a whole range of different organisations who have recently certified. These are some of the brands. So Patagonia, kind of famous activist brand, but they were an instigator of the B Corp movement at the very beginning. You can see it's in 89 different countries, and over 500,000 people are now employed by B Corps. So I think the collective effect of B Corps is notable. And I was thinking about this earlier. There's the obligation of a B Corp is to continually raise the bar of what a business can and should be doing. And I think by doing so, we should be inspiring change across other businesses and helping play our part in driving change worldwide. The definition, this is lifted straight off the B Corp website. So a certified B Corporation or a B Corp is a company verified B Labs to meet the high standards of social and environmental performance, transparency and accountability. There's 5 areas of assessment that we and other B Corps have worked through. And there's I think it's 180 different questions you have to work through, which is a fairly time-consuming process. Sometimes you think it's going to be quick to go through, but it's simply not. It takes many months and quite a lot of time and effort to go through. It's also very useful because it forces you to think really holistically about the business in every aspect, from breastfeeding policies to carbon to the suppliers that you're working with. So it's a really wholesome, good thing to do, I think, for any business, even if you don't go formally through the certification. And then there's an obligation, and that obligation is to update your Articles of Association to include the commitment to have think about wider stakeholders in all the decisions that you make, and that's something we've done in the UK. So if you're interested in B Corps, ask me some questions at the end. You can go and do an assessment yourself and do a dummy run, and that will help you learn about the whole process. And that's me. That's Just Move In, and that's, I guess, the mission that we're on. So thank you very much.